back. We are talking with Colonel Dan Gallington, United States Air Force retired, former senior civilian in the Pentagon and other agencies of our government with a very distinguished record of service to our country. We're talking about nuclear warfighting and the possibility that that may be something Vladimir Putin is actually not only equipped to do, but has the will and the intent to do as well. Dan, before the break, we talked a little bit about the capabilities that Putin has put into place. Uh, some of those are tactical weapons. I don't know whether we know whether they have been forward deployed with units now engaged in Ukraine or whether they are in the rear echelon. Any insights into that? And more to the point, you've suggested that he may well be willing to use these weapons. I'd be interested in your thoughts as to how that might be accomplished and against what kinds of targets.
Again, alluding to the period of the 1950s and the tripwire, which I think, as I said, if I had a conversation with him, I could get him to acknowledge how that impressed upon him the idea that there was a nuclear response if they attacked us conventionally through the Fulda Gap. There was a nuclear response. I think he has the same mindset, and I think they have, as we did in the 50s in NATO, fully integrated the tactical nuclear weaponry within a conventional utilization of the army, which he's done in Ukraine. Would I be surprised?
So you would say that they probably have tactical nuclear
I
weapons
would not
with
be.
those
Oh,
forces now engaged in this
yeah,
invasion?
absolutely. I would not be
Oh.
surprised to learn or have him acknowledge that yes, there are tactical nuclear weapons located, deployed in the Ukraine. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
So you've mentioned several times the Fulda Gap as kind of our
Right,
counterpart, a choke point that we would have tried to use them back in the
right,
day when we had inadequate conventional capabilities to stop an invasion. He's engaged in an invasion.
exactly.
If his purpose is to so suppress the Ukrainians to compel their surrender, what kinds of use might you expect him to
I
make of
would
these
say
weapons?
probably I would call it, and this is my own word. I would say it's a demonstration. Uh,
Mm.
one or two tactical nuclear weapons, possibly in an area where there would be some destruction, certainly, but there wouldn't be the kind of massive human toll that we would ordinarily associate with nuclear weapons. And I think they would be done uh, purely for demonstration. Here is what we're talking about. And if you didn't believe me, here it is. And if you maybe they do one day and say something like that, and then say and do another one another day. I mean, this guy is, he's a poker player, and he
Mhm.
likes this sort of repartee with the West. And as you mentioned, Frank, uh, he knows, like everyone else in the world knows, that
Mhm.
when we get into a war, it's always by virtue of some surprise attack. Look at our history.
Yeah.
The way to beat us and bring us down is to attack us without warning. And he,
Right. That that
yes,
that brings me to the next
right,
question, Dan, and it's the multi-trillion-dollar question, I guess. One of our colleagues, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, has recently written that Putin, in his modernization program, most especially, has engineered his strategic nuclear
yes,
forces, that is, ones that are not tactical, not theater,
right,
but
yeah,
long range, capable of reaching us either from the heartland of this Russian empire of his or perhaps its ports for submarines based
yeah,
there or close in, let alone in the broad ocean areas or with bombers, but that his preparations, including, by the way, going back to your anecdote earlier about protecting his
right,
leadership, not necessarily the entire population, but the people that he cares about, is such that he may well be able to effect a surprise nuclear strike against the country. And as I say, he has actually, presided over simulations of such
Yeah, and why
attacks.
else would you
Is that a realistic expectation and concern?
exactly? And why else would you configure and design your strategic forces that way, unless it was your your premise that they would never be used as a defensive situation or response. They would always be used
Retaliation.
as an attack initiation. Look at that
Hmm.
another weapon that they fielded, this long range artificially manned nuclear submarine. What
Hmm.
do you use something like that for? If
Yeah.
it's not
This intercontinental torpedo, it's also been
exactly,
called, intercontinental range, that has reportedly 100 megaton warhead on it, unbelievably large and hugely destructive. If it were to hit a port in this country, it would devastate it and the region around it for probably millennia. The thought that is so worrying about this is these are the sorts of weapons that somebody who is deadly serious about doing mass harm to our country would produce, deploy, and may be willing to use. What do we need to take away from all of this, Dan? Most especially with
well, I
respect to
think
deterring such use.
you and I would probably, again, if we were just chatting informally, would agree that we need both a short-term approach and we need a longer-term approach. The short-term approach needs to be focused on strategic defense and ways we can protect ourselves from these very scary nuclear threats you've described, and yet a longer term approach to develop and to renew our own force structure. I mean, we're talking about a force structure, Frank,
Yes.
that's 50 years old. I read an article.
No, that's right. 50
Exactly.
years old and no missile
Exactly.
defense at all. Dan, we have to leave it at that. These are
Sure.
topics to which I hope we can return with you very soon. Thank you for your service to our country,
Thanks, Frank.
not least what you've just rendered on our program. We'll talk with you soon. I appreciate the rest of you being with us for this edition of Securing America. I hope you feel better equipped to do just that. Visit securingamerica.tv for more on what you can do. And then, as I'm fond of saying, go forth and multiply.